And now we'd like to welcome to the program one of our show's very best friends, a North Pole, Alaska resident, someone I grew up with and I've probably watched almost as much basketball with as anyone in the world, and that's Cody Hoxie. Code, our resident Duke fan. How's everything going today?
It's going good. College basketball is right around the corner, so how can you not be excited about that?
Yeah, no doubt, man, no doubt. Well, let's because you started out right off with that. Let's talk about that. How do you think this season, just in general, is going to go? Um, Obviously, pros are that the season is coming back, and a couple early season tournaments have been, canceled and moved around and stuff. But do you foresee the season going as smoothly as possible from there, or are you just kind of riding the wave, seeing how it's all going to go?
I just think we needed when we have college basketball, we got to enjoy it because we have no clue how long we're going to have it. We got spoiled all these years of having it, and then February, March, it went away. So college football is going through the same thing. We're scheduling games right now, so I'm just going to enjoy it as long as we have it. So if that's one game, 3 games, try not to get too excited because I know it can be taken away quickly. But let's hope we get to March and finish March this time.
So, speaking of March, what do you think the tournament would have been like, or I guess probably will be like this coming year without fans? Obviously, we've seen the NBA go through a bubble situation, so we kind of know what basketball looks like without fans. But again, are you just kind of same thoughts? As long as it's on, then you're happy.
Yeah, as long as we have basketball, fans or no fans, fans are definitely make a huge contribution to the game that players didn't think they had. It's harder to get amped up for the game when you don't have 30,000 fans screaming your name or against your name. So it's hard to get hyped when it's just all on you. And that's where the coaches they're gonna have to be a even bigger role for their teams this year. And then you got these freshmen. It's going to be a lot easier to going into some of these arenas, not having these fans scream your name. So you take that first shot, and you don't hear a bunch of boos. A lot easier to take that second shot, third shot, fourth shot now.
Oh yeah, especially on teams that are so reliant on their freshmen. The Kentuckys or Dukes or whatever of the world. The reasons that they get upset a lot of times is because they go on the road, to hostile environments, just like you said, so on and so forth, and they get rattled and have a bad game. So, do you think teams like the Dukes and the Kentuckys and just the good teams of the world are going to be a little more successful than normal this year because of that? Or do you think that in the end, it's really just going to be the best team, the best players are going to win?
I don't know. I think it's going to help and hurt Duke. So when you're at home, you don't have that Duke crowd to go back. When teams usually in the last 4 to 5 minutes they just falter because that Duke crowd is getting loud and crazy and whatnot. But then you go where Duke is the biggest draw for all these teams. That's when they're selling out all these games. It could be the fucking team that they just lost to last year with the chainsaws. Like that team sells out. Like all these teams just sell out when Duke's.
The lumberjacks, you mean?
Yes, the Lumberjacks.
The team with the chainsaws. Okay.
Yeah, try to forget the awful, probably the worst day of my life. Besides when we got basketball canceled, but yeah, I think it's gonna be a benefit and not. So um, yeah, so
Are they? Do we know? I know that each individual team is doing things differently. Duke just said that there weren't going to be any fans at Cameron this year. Do we know? Do you know off the top of your head, or have you seen which teams in the ACC specifically might have fans? I can't remember which ones may or may not at this point.
I do not. You might know better with football. I don't know if some fans in the ACC are allowing fans and some aren't. Like I don't know if Duke's allowing fans at football and UNC's allowing football. I'd guess it's a lot easier to allow people at football games. A lot more seats. A lot you can spread them out a lot more. Uh, but I do not know, and it could change tomorrow if they let fans in or not, don't have fans for the rest of the year. That's what this year is going to be all about. Changing, going with the flow, changes.
I probably considering the fact that I host a college basketball podcast, probably would have been a good thing for me to look up before asking that question. But like you said, I'll just blame it on the year that we have going on right now. So you just said that losing to the Lumberjacks, Stephen F. Austin last year was one of the worst days of your Duke career. What was one of your favorite Duke memories, or maybe just one or a handful of them, maybe?
Winning a couple of championships wasn't too bad. Actually, watched one in
Okay,
college.
let's get like some maybe more off the radar ones. Not like, oh well, though obviously winning the championship is kind of
Um,
a high point.
a couple that come to mind is last year. I know UNC was awful last year, but that great comeback when UNC couldn't make a free throw, the Austin Rivers shot, that was an awesome game. Just or the Louisville comeback a couple years ago when Louisville shit the bed and Zion and the boys came back. So that's just something that comes straight to my mind right now. Besides the national championship games,
Can you guess what my favorite Duke memory is?
the one where I did not watch it with you because I was at my own apartment, probably about 50 feet down the hall, where we lost to you guys, and every single year,
Just got the shit kicked out of you by Derek Williams and Jamel Horn of all people.
it
Jamel
was a
Horn.
it was a tough year to live in Arizona. Every single year, Facebook reminds me about that game because about 20 people commented on me about how Duke got their ass hammered.
So, looking forward to this year, potentially some upcoming um, Duke memories to make here. What do you think of Duke's team this year? As of late, they've had very young teams, and that seems to be another theme with what's going to be happening this year. Are you a little worried about maybe a lack of senior leadership on the team? Goldwire is kind of their only senior. They have a transfer from Columbia that's a redshirt senior big man, but they really don't have a ton of old players on this team. Shoot, Matthew Hurt is really kind of their oldest leader on the team. Do you think that's going to harm them at all this year?
I think it's gonna show up in the early. It's gonna hurt, but we don't play for the first game. We play from March to hang the next banner up. So as the year goes on, these freshmen will become sophomores very quickly when they play all these big games. Though they got a few big games, and so I think they'll grow up quickly. But yeah, Jordan Goldwire is gonna have to. He's gonna be the team huddler. Like every team has to have that one guy. Like, hey guys, let's huddle up. Jordan Goldwire is going to have to get that when he's out there. And Matthew Hurt and Wendell Moore are going to have to be sophomores for real this time. They showed some glimpses last year. Wendell Moore had the huge game-winning bucket against UNC, so he'll never have to buy anything in his life in North Carolina again. But yeah, they are going to be young, but come March, they'll be just like half the country.
So there's a number of notable teams this year that are kind of in the same boat. Like we previously mentioned, Kentucky is just like that, but they're always like that. Duke, Kansas is kind of a little bit of an unknown this year in the same regard, but some of the better teams in the country, and especially in the ACC, people like Virginia. Kihei Clark is still at Virginia, and guys like that. Uh, Virginia is kind of the odds-on favorite to win the conference at this point. Do you see anyone else in the conference right now that would challenge Duke or Virginia for the title, the ACC title, or those two just kind of head and shoulders above everybody else?
I would say Duke and Virginia are the main teams, but Roy Williams, he's always got a group of kids, and then everyone always forgets about Florida State and Leonard Hamilton, and I don't think you can ever count those guys out either. So it's gonna be a crapshoot, just like it is every year. But I like our chances.
Yeah, Florida State really, we've talked about this on multiple episodes previously. They're really one of the, if not the singular most underrated program in terms of success in the country. They've They have like the third most ACC titles, and they really kind of finish sneaky in the top four or top five in the conference almost every single year. They have a lot of old depth on their roster too. They're going to start two seniors and two redshirt juniors. And like I said, with Virginia, they have Kihei Clark, who's a junior. They have one of the Hauser brothers, who, even though he hasn't been with Virginia, for more than this year, senior. Jay Huff is still there. He seems like he's been there forever. It's
Exactly.
definitely gonna, yeah, it's definitely going to be tough for that Duke team to get it, to, and maybe a little more so difficult in these years because, or in this year compared to others, because you just aren't going to have as much time to grow up as in other years. You're not going to play a bunch of San Jose States and Moorhead States and all these stuff to kind of at least, get your feelers out there. We're looking at playing only, 20 something games this year. So that'll be really interesting to me, with teams like Duke, for example, of how quickly those guys grow up. Now,
Yeah,
when you look at, or go ahead.
yeah, these guys are getting thrown right into the fire this year. Like, there's no, oh, we got a bunch of warm up games till the ACC. It's coming quick. It's coming quick this year. So we playing a couple of the tournaments, and I forget what do we got, like Michigan State, Iowa, a couple games. So they're gonna grow up in those games, and the ACC schedule's right there. So uh, it's gonna be interesting.
So have you looked much at the top 25 um, at this point yet? I know it just came out yesterday or 2 days ago when this podcast goes live. Is there a team, like you just said, with Duke plays Illinois and Michigan State, both two highly rated teams, that are not in the ACC, but then outside of that, they dive right in. Is there any team that kind of caught your eye in the top 25 that you thought, oh, well, they're too high, or oh, they're too low, or maybe even you just looked at him and said, man, I don't know a fucking thing about that team?
Um, I tell you who we're going to learn about real quick is Gonzaga. Jeez, not only are the number one rated team, but three of their first four games are playing preseason top six teams. So I think we're going to learn a
Well,
lot about them.
and Auburn, who
Yeah,
is no slouch. I'm sure we'll talk about that with best friend of the program, Auburn's director of basketball operations there, Mike Burgomaster. Auburn's not even ranked, and they still went to a Final Four 2 years ago. So yeah, you're completely right
exactly.
in that.
You're gonna learn real quick if Gonzaga's for real, and that could they could be out almost, like, I don't want to say out of the tournament, but they could lose a real high ranking. You drop a few of those games because their conference and they're not going to pick up too many great wins there. So, and then other thing is Iowa. I know you guys are all about Iowa. Returning a bunch of starters. I think everyone, right?
Yeah, Bohannon got hurt last year, and so he was one of those guys that got a waiver after he got hurt. So he's a redshirt
Yeah.
senior.
So, but
And then, yeah, I mean, everybody on that team is a redshirt senior, redshirt sophomore, a senior, whatever. Obviously Luca
and
Garza's
a player
arguably,
yeah, and a
yeah.
player of the year
Hmm.
candidate doesn't hurt either. So,
Well, he's more than just a candidate, really.
oh yeah,
So
he's probably the leader.
well, and then you got the two McCaffrey brothers too. It's interesting. We're, like you said, we're very bullish on them on this show. Um, I guess really their only detractor is, we haven't seen Fran McCaffrey coach a ton of super high level games or super high level tournament games. Obviously, he's been there for a long time as a well seasoned college basketball coach. Do you have any feelings on his ability to push them over the top, or do you think that this is just his first opportunity to have this much talent? Let me emphasize, this much talent, like literal all Americans, that he might actually take him over the top because he's actually given the opportunity this time.
In the year 2020, why not Iowa winning it all? Like, everything else is surprises, so why not Iowa going out? And it really wouldn't surprise us. I know on a couple, I don't know if it's the last show or the previous show before that, but a lot of people are down on Iowa, which is just crazy to me because they're the defensive metrics, but they're high on all these kids they've never seen play above high school basketball. Like, that makes absolutely no sense to me.
like we've talked about on here before, like you said, some teams, people are like, oh, well, they just are who they are, forgetting that, like, everyone's still only 19 or 20. When we say
Yeah,
veteran about college basketball players, that means they're only 21, or 22. So obviously there's a lot of room to grow. But I want to go back to what you said about Gonzaga there real quick, if I may. Um, this might be the year that Gonzaga doesn't have like a top 3 seed. And maybe that's kind of what you were getting at as well. I
exactly,
think they're probably going to win at least 2 of the 3 games that they're playing. But theoretically, if they lost all 3, there would be no reason to put them above, any other team that won any legitimate out of conference game at all, because they would have,
exactly.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't even I don't even know enough about the West Coast Conference to know who else is going to be good this year. BYU, I guess, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah,
St. Mary's
yeah,
always, right.
yeah.
So or go ahead.
I like them challenging themselves, but you could you better win at least 2 of the 3 games, and you better have a damn good year. Because if you go 0-3, which I doubt they will, but that's gonna sting because it's gonna be hard to pick up key wins out of conference because you're not playing many conference out of conference games.
Oh, 100%. So another team that a little bit about, not necessarily a ton about though, is Texas. And I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you about how Texas is going to play this year, other than they have an Alaskan on their team in Kameka Hepa from Barrow. But the big thing I want to ask you is, did you see that Shaka Smart has hair now?
I don't know. He hasn't done any. Maybe it'll help him. He hasn't done anything in Texas.
Dog, it's crazy. He looks like a completely different person. He's crazy.
Well,
I mean,
hopefully,
this is he's really going, as Subi tweeted out on the Theater and College Hoops account earlier. He's really doing anything and everything to change his luck there at Texas. So,
what a
that,
disappointment that entire school is. Like I
yeah.
don't see
Now
how.
another. Oh yeah, no, they're a complete. I don't want to say a disaster of an athletic department. I know I kind of beat a dead horse on this program by talking about how bad they are in comparison to how good they should be across the board athletically. And if you
Yeah,
look at like our college basketball power rankings from over the summer, and of course in college football as well, and even in baseball, they're a top 20 all-time program, or top 25 all-time program across all 3 of those sports. But you still think they should be way higher than they are in all of those sports.
you and I have both been to Austin, and I think it should be pretty easy to recruit people to come to that place. Like,
Oh
like
yeah, 100%. You could recruit me, go back there tomorrow. No,
exactly,
no, no problem.
exactly.
No problem.
If
So,
they need a water boy, I'm their shop.
yeah, yeah, no doubt. So let's talk a little bit more about you, actually. So you live in North Pole, Alaska. We both grew up in North Pole, Alaska. How did you become a Duke fan in the first place?
So I used to go to Florida every single March, and none of my family really liked basketball, but my grandpa would always have college basketball games on, and usually I'd always go for his team, and we were just watching a game. I was like, I'm gonna go against my grandpa's team that he's rooting for, and ended up being Duke, and ended up being pretty good. So it worked out well for me.
So
I
it's
get a lot
essentially
of flack.
it's the same story that you and I have with the Red Sox and the Yankees, essentially, huh? But in
Exactly.
reverse. Okay.
Yeah, it's great when they win, but it's tough when they lose because you get a lot of flack, and especially being a Yankees fan, people are like, "Oh, of course you're a Duke fan, or of course you're a Yankees fan," because the 2 greatest programs in college baseball, I mean college basketball and baseball. So it's uh, it's great when they win, and it's tough when they lose because it's the 2 teams everyone hates.
Code, according to our college basketball manifesto, they're a top 5 program. But yes, sure, we'll give you that. Close enough. Well, I guess last but not least, anything else you got going on coming up? Obviously, we're doing this a little later than usual tonight because you have I guess we'll still call Brooklyn a newborn. But anything else coming up in the life of Cody Hoxie we need to know about?
No, I think my daughter is going to learn a lot of choice words this basketball season. I already had her when the top 25 rankings came out, had to put in her Duke onesie, and yeah, sure, she's going to learn a lot of words, and my wife's going to yell at me a bunch. Hearing the words that are coming out of my mouth, probably waking up from a couple naps. So, Duke better play good for my daughter's sleep and for me not getting yelled at by my wife.
Hey man, I I think that's the only way to end it right there. The life and times of a true college basketball fan in a newborn plus COVID environment. So, well, thanks, Code. Appreciate you being on the program. Always appreciate you being a loyal listener of the program, and I'm sure we'll have you back on soon. Actually, we're not going to have you back on soon if Duke's winning a lot, but if they lose a couple, we'll definitely have you back on then.
All right. Well, hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully I come back on, but hopefully not losing a lot. And thanks for having me on. And can't wait to keep on listening to you guys.
Thanks, brother. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Cool. All right. So
Goes
we'll just cut that good.
Goes,
Yeah. Go
goes
ahead.
a lot quicker than you think it does.
Oh, I know. Yeah, it really does. Especially when I don't know if you've listened to any of the ones when you have like the guy that I brought up, Mike Burgomaster.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we could talk to him for days, really on end, because he's so knowledgeable about everything. Obviously, because he's involved in the program. So, cool. If you don't mind just hopping off whenever you have a second. And then I got to start over the whole program and make sure I write down my times so I can tell Subi where to cut everything. So,
All right, man. I'll talk to you later.
all right, brother. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye. You're listening to Theater and College Hoops. I'm Taylor Dammel. Alongside me is nobody today. Just me alone, solo on the mic here. We're brought to you by Dash Radio and the Barn Burner Podcast Network. Go subscribe on whichever device you use. Ah, shit. Do we still do that? Fuck. You're listening to Theater and College Hoops. I'm Taylor Damel. Alongside me is nobody today. Just me is all you get because Subi and the Shark decided to be absent 2 weeks before the season starts. Anyway, we're brought to you by Dash Radio's Nothing But Net channel and the fucking God fuck. You're listening to Theater and College Hoops. I'm Taylor Damel. Alongside me is nobody. By myself. ISO today. No Subi, no Shark, just me. No pillow, no blanket. Cold world. We're brought to you by Dash Radio's Nothing But Net channel and the Barn Burner Podcast Network. Go subscribe on whichever device you use. Our random college basketball player of the week is Quincy Doobie. Rutgers great, honoring Rutgers' initial 24th ranking here in the top 25 for the first time in at least our lifetimes, I assume. So we hope Quincy Doobie subscribes, but you should too. Check out the website at thebarnburner.com. That's the-barnburner.com at CBB Theater. You can also follow me at Taylor Damel to find out where the feed is. So let's dive into it today. Like I said, no Shark, no Subi. They left me here all alone out in the middle of nowhere to hopefully steer the ship into port all by my lonesome. Speaking of steering ships into port, this is not college basketball related at all, but today is the anniversary of the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald. So if you do have a second, turn on some Gordon Lightfoot and listen and enjoy the wonderful song of the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Well, let's dive into some college basketball news. The biggest news of the week is that the AP released their initial preseason top 25 poll with Gonzaga coming in at the number one spot for the first time in school history, which is kind of surprising, I guess, that it's the first time they've been ranked number one in the preseason poll. It seems like almost each and every year they spend your time at number one at some point during the season. I know last year they spent, I believe, 3 or 4 weeks at number one, but this year start off at the top. And it's interesting because, as we'll talk about later on in the program, we do have an interview with good friend of the program, Cody Hoxie, who is a Duke fan. But one of the interesting things that we talked about is that Gonzaga has one hell of a schedule to start the season. They have Kansas, they have Auburn, they have Baylor, and they have Iowa, with 3 of those 4 coming on the road. And talk about not easing into your schedule at all and just resting on that number one ranking. One of the things that we often give Gonzaga, or we have a problem with when it comes to them is, they play nobody in conference. Well, in this shortened coronavirus season, playing 4 teams like that to start the season, if they win even three of those and swoop through the rest of their West Coast Conference schedule, they'll have no problem getting a top seed or the overall top seed, even maybe over an undefeated team if we might happen to see one of those this season. So we do want to give Gonzaga some props on hopping into a schedule and obviously them being number one in the country. Baylor, Villanova, Virginia also received some first place votes, and they round out the top 4 with Iowa coming in at 5, which we're very bullish on Iowa here on this podcast. Virginia, Iowa, Baylor, Gonzaga, Villanova, all returning. The theme to them is they all have got a bunch of returners, and they've all got a bunch of talent. Obviously, some great coaches there. Fran McCaffrey being about the only coach involved there that, hasn't coached at a super high level in the tournament. So it'll kind of remain to be seen how much success they're going to have this season because of that. But when it comes to their actual roster, all those dudes on that roster are like 24 years old. And the National Player of the Year, Luka Garza, on that roster obviously bodes well for them. You got Kansas, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Duke. I have Kentucky rounding out the top 10. Some different stories with them, especially as it relates to Kansas and Duke and Kentucky. A lot of newcomers there on those 3 schools. Super talented, but not exactly the same type of one and done talent we usually see with those schools. You're not going to have. They're not trotting out 6 5-stars at a time. Each of them has a couple 5-stars, which is obviously great. But no one that right now at this point you look at and goes, oh man, they're the number 1 pick in the draft or anything like that, at least as a freshman. Tennessee, obviously, I don't want to speak too much on them because that's the Sharks boys, so I know he'll have a lot to say about that coming up. A couple great programs sitting right behind them at Michigan State and Texas Tech, who we really like a lot on this show. I think some of the bigger surprises come down here a little lower, and I don't know if I want to say surprise because a lot of people are very high on Arizona State. They come in at 18th, and that's extremely high for them. Bobby Hurley obviously has a great thing going just down the street from me here in Tempe, Arizona. And, that's another kind of example of a school that and a coach that they don't have a lot of success deep into the tournament. That might change this year. Shaka Smart coming in at Texas at number 19 there, right after Arizona State. As we point out later, like I said with Cody, Shaka Smart has hair now, which is just an incredible look for him. And I don't mean incredible in a good way necessarily, but they're right there. If they finish anything worse than that, especially outside of the top 25 or maybe without a tournament win this year, you got to think that Shaka might be done in Austin. So that's definitely going to be a team to watch. LSU ended up finishing right outside the top 25. Florida right outside the top 25. Memphis and Florida, I should say, right outside the top 25 since we are a Memphis-based podcast, both receiving 69 votes. Nice. Alabama, Indiana, Louisville. A little surprised that Louisville didn't get a little more love on this on the voting here, but that being said, they did lose a lot from last year. Would hate to leave Providence and their 9 votes off this list as well. So those are the initial, some of the teams that caught me in the initial top 25 rankings. I'm not a big Gonzaga fan, as most of you know if you've listened to this podcast before, which I'm sure you have because you subscribe weekly. But it's no surprise that at some point they had to reach number one at some initial preseason ranking. So good on them for doing that, and good on them for starting off the season with incredibly tough games on the schedule. Moving on to another story that we had this week, our boy Tom Izzo, Michigan State's head coach, contracted coronavirus this week, and he'll be away from the program for a number of weeks here. Obviously, we wish him well, and we fortunately have seen a number of college football coaches and just other coaches from all over the athletic world contract coronavirus and ended up being recovering from that. So, of course, we hope the same for Tom Izzo. But, it begs the question going forward really is that's going to be just like in any sport. What is the effect of that? If not now, because obviously it's preseason and you can still get a lot done with your assistant coaches, Zoom meetings, things like that. But what happens heading into the Big Ten tournament if a coach gets coronavirus, and how does that affect the team going forward? I hate to always talk too much about Arizona, but there was a couple 2 or 3 years ago when Lorenzo Romar was our assistant coach, and Sean Miller sat out a game because of the FBI investigation, allegations, whatever. And we thought, oh, okay, we got another solid, strong assistant coach. Should be no problem. Well, it was a problem. Our team looked exactly like all of the Lorenzo Romar coach teams at Washington when he came in and played, which resulted in a loss. So even though you might really rely heavily on your great assistant coaches, what makes these guys like Izzo and Krzyzewski and Self and all these guys great is they are, who they are. We are who they thought they were. And so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Of course, like I said, we hope nothing but the best for our boy Tom Izzo, as he is probably our most mutually loved, I guess we could say loved, coach on this program. Hate to belabor the coronavirus talk, but Minnesota also closed down their athletic facilities this week because of some tests, and some other news regarding that as well. Duke is not going to have any fans at Cameron Indoor this year because of coronavirus, and that really goes to begs the question again, kind of going off that same point we made with Tom Izzo, about coronavirus just in general, but which teams are going to have the best coaches and the more depth where having fans or no fans in the crowd does it matter to them? Does it not? Obviously, a place like Duke, they might have the best home court advantage in the country. So you would imagine that they're going to be affected negatively because of that. Whereas there are schools that don't have any fans to show up anyway, so their home court advantage might not be any different at all. So no fans at Cameron Indoor is kind of big news, just because it's kind of the home of college basketball, as we all know. Now, one of the things that will be hosted at Cameron Indoor is the Champions Classic, where they're going to split between where's my pen? Now, one of the things that will be hosted at Cameron Indoor this year is one leg of the Champions Classic. Now, usually the Champions Classic is held, I believe it's been held in Indy before. I think it was at the United Center in Chicago one year. This year, they're going to split it. Kansas and Kentucky are going to play in Indiana, or in Indianapolis, I should say, which is the home of the Final Four this year as well, might I add. And Michigan State and Duke are going to play Cameron Indoor. I find it, pretty interesting that they're going to split that up. Thought we could have gotten a good example of what the college basketball bubble might have looked like if they would have played it in the same location. Um, but obviously, no need to risk that so early in the season with teams cross contaminating and all of that. So that is one major game that Cameron Indoor is going to host that they weren't necessarily planning on hosting. Obviously, no fans there. Now, I do want to address an interesting quote I saw today, or just a few days ago. I should say, of one of our maybe most hated college basketball referees, Ted Valentine, TV Ted as he's known around college basketball. He came out and said today that or earlier this week, that he just feeds off of the crowd, and that he feels like he's on stage every time that he's reffing a college basketball game. And those guys are just the fucking worst. The refs who they just pause, block charge, and they sit there, which seems like it takes for 5 seconds, but really it probably only takes a quarter of a second. And they put their hand back as it looks like they're going to call a charge, and then they hack the waist, and it's a block. Now, that's a classic Ted Valentine move. And I think it's interesting that he came out and said that he actually feels like that he actually does feed off the crowd, and that is something that he embraces and gets a high on. Now, I don't know if that's a good thing, though, because you think like, okay, well, if the teams are playing frantically because of a home court advantage situation, or a home court advantage, negative, I guess, to the other team, but you know that's that's acceptable. But if the refs are playing off that to that huge of a degree too, you probably love it if you're the home crowd, but probably not so good if you're the away team. Um, it's just I think it's absurd that he would admit this, though, especially because that's kind of what he's known for. Um, he did point out specifically that he's loved Purdue's Mackey Arena. Uh, Big floor, big apron, big sideline. You're not running into people. He also loves Vanderbilt as well. This has got to be the third or fourth of the last 5 episodes that we talked about Vanderbilt's court. He says he specifically loved Vanderbilt's court because the coaches are on the baselines, and the arena, or I should say the floor, is just huge. A lot of room to spread out. So pretty notable stuff from TV Ted. He said that on Rival podcast that Robbie Hummel and Jeff Goodman host. So I maybe we'll try and get Ted on here, TV Ted, to hop on here with us as well. See if maybe he can enlighten us on some more arenas that he enjoys or hates. But yeah, interesting stuff from TV Ted there. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't also bring up that Baylor's playing a similarly tough schedule to Gonzaga as well. They start the season with Arizona State. They also play number 2 Villanova. They play at Seton Hall. They play Illinois. They play Gonzaga as well, like we previously mentioned. So that is another phenomenal start to the season, and it's great to see these schools that, given the limited timelines that they have, are throwing, if they can at least, as many tough games into their out of conference schedule as possible. Now, last but not least, before we hop into our interview with Cody Hoxies, we do want to wish Bill Walton a happy 68th birthday here this week. Perhaps my favorite announcer, along with Gus Johnson, in the sport. You either love or you hate Bill Walton. There's really no in between. Personally, I love him. My mother hates him, for whatever that's worth. I know we have a lot of love for him, mostly on this program, and especially from Subi and I, considering nobody reps the Conference of Champions better than Bill Walton. So happy birthday to Bill Walton. But without further ado, here's our man from North Pole, Alaska, resident Duke fan, I guess, on this program. Let's call him our boy Cody Hoxie. Now, we want to thank Code again for joining the program from the snowy north. We forgot to mention that it did snow something like 18 inches there in the last 3 days. So winter is very much upon them. I'm glad that they even had internet going up there, given given that all the poles and shit could have fallen down. Um, so moving on to a couple segments before we round some things out here, I want to do a "Where Am I?" which I haven't necessarily thrown a "Where Am I" in a long time, and I hate to throw a bone to the school down the road for me, but I'm gonna go with former ASU player Carrick Felix. If you remember Crick Felix, he played at ASU from 2010 to 2013. He was a JUCO transfer. He's from here in Goodyear, Arizona. He bounced around, kind of playing, had some opportunities in the league, in the G League. In between one season, he actually started, I should say, in between one G League season, he started an app, kind of like an Uber for recreational equipment like jet skis and ATVs and four wheelers and things of that nature. And now he is the founder and director of IMC Elite Coaching. IMC Elite Coaching is for successful men who want to balance life but won't sacrifice that life for success. Through self discovery, emotional empathy, and healthy relationships, we set out to teach each individual the mindset and tools it takes to achieve their highest level of success. We all have a unique story to tell, a unique path to travel that maps out your journey to success. So, Crick Felix, just a motivational life coach here, I guess, trying to better the people, the people around him, the men seemingly who want to be both successful but and have a great work life balance as well. So there you go, Carrick Felix, ASU grad, and has his master's from ASU as well. I think he was all Pac-12 his senior year. He was second team All Pac-12. He was also the Pac-12 Scholar Athlete of the Year and was first team Pac-12 academic team as well. So that's our "Where Am I?" shout out to Carrick Felix. I don't want to call him my boy because he went to ASU, but we'll say our collective boys program here. I want to give a hug to another friend of the program, J.D. Wise, former Wisconsin basketball great. It was his birthday yesterday. Hope to have him back on the program soon to discuss Wisconsin coming up this year, especially given their high ranking going into the year, and just to see the state of his world, see everything he's got going on. So hug to JD Wise. I want to thank you guys for joining me. I wish I could say us, but joining me here on Theater and College Hoops. Hopefully, we'll have a little more banter on the next episode and not just me talking and rambling to myself. And I will cut my rambling off and say, have a good time or have a good day, and we'll check you later.